a second cohort that would be made up of Dayton Public School teachers.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Baccarat?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the presentation. What precludes some of the parents to move children from the schools where there are no GIS into the schools that do have the GIS? And you said majority have moved, but there are, I think, 30 or so who are not?
Right. What happens is that we can't serve all the schools with 7 people. It just really isn't possible. If a parent wants gifted service, we ask them to move. And this has a variety of benefits. It gives the gifted student other students who are like-minded. When we pull them out, we have a community. Would we like to put every GIS in a school? Absolutely. Realistically, at this moment, it's not possible. We want to identify more students, and as we do that, we'd like to increase the number of GISs in the schools, and that's what we're working towards.
My question was actually about what precludes the parents of those gifted children from moving their kids into the schools that
Oh.
already have the GIS?
Nothing.
Nothing. Oh,
Sometimes it takes a while for them to be transferred, but those that want to be transferred are. A parent can decide they don't want to move a child because they're in the 7th grade. Student's been in that school for 7 years. It's only going to be another year, then they're off to high school. They don't want to unsettle the child. There could be siblings that they don't want to unsettle yet. And we move not only gifted, we move the siblings. So a parent, if in the 6th grade schools, they may be going to Stivers or auditioning for Stivers or Ponitz. They don't want to move. So,
okay. That clarifies it. Thank you.
Vice President Lee, and then we'll come to Ms. Allen.
Yes, couple things. When Ms. Gruber uses the term PETS, that's primary education thinking skills.
right.
We're not talking about, saying something negatively. Okay, the whole process of this, to me, was we have put a lot of focus in thinking into what we're going to do with our underperforming schools as well as our underperforming children. And I began to realize that there has to be a balance because you can over-focus one way and lose your children the other side of the coin. And that was my whole preference for pushing for this gifted program, knowing that we had a lot of work to do, we had a lot of certification to get through, and we had a lot of studying to do to understand how we could make this work. So this, to me, is just the beginning of a great program that will accelerate within the district and help us to reach our children on all levels and in all of our buildings. And I thank you for the great work that you've done so far. I know it's been hard. I know the certification has been, something to work with. It, as well as how do we start. Like anything, you have to start somewhere to make something become what you desire it to be, and that is a dream that all of our children will get the services and the support that they need, regardless of what level they're on. It's about where we're at and what we're bringing to the table to help them. And I commend you for your work with the gifted students.
And we really appreciate your support because truthfully, without it, we wouldn't be here. And you're interested in gifted. Thank you. Can we?
Ms. Allen?
Not having, well, my name is Antea Allen. I attend Middledale High School, and not having a GIS in every school, is that a funding issue? Because
It's a funding issue. it's a practical issue. If you have only one gifted student in a building, putting a GIS in that building is difficult. It's not necessarily cost-effective when there are other options for the child.
Okay. Not having a GIS at our high school is not giving the opportunity for other kids to succeed. And it's not really fair because we do have gifted students in each high school, and everyone doesn't get accepted into Cybers.
We absolutely agree with you. There is no question about it. But we did not have the personnel. The teachers, the two teachers that are at Stivers were already teachers there. One is the orchestra teacher, and the other one is the AP English.
So, and Tia brings up a good question, if I may, because it's an excellent question. A teacher that is skilled to teach an advanced placement class is delivering services to children at the high school level. A student who has access to College Credit Plus does have access to a gifted education. So it's not just the GIS. And I think because I don't want this to get really confusing, we put an all call out for people who wanted to become gifted indoors. We received 10. So acceleration, T, what you're talking about is be it advanced placement, international baccalaureate, college credit plus, honors courses are all servicing gifted children. Okay, and Ms. Bryant's there to make sure that those teachers at the high schools can do that.
Yes, and they all have WEPs.
Right, right.
WEPs have been really involved.
But we also provide professional development. And the state says as long as we provide ongoing professional development for those teachers, the students are receiving gifted service.
Thank you. Board Member Lacy?
I'm sorry, I'll defer to Ms. Allen if you're not done.
Yeah.
Oh, defer to Ms. Allen.
As I'm thinking, Stivers isn't the only school that's making up our OGT scores. Further than that, it's more to it because I sit in my honors class every day, and when I go to students that's not on my level and ask them what they're learning the same thing that we're learning. So if we're supposed to be in honor classes, our classes shouldn't be the same as those. It's just on an average standpoint in high school. And I just feel as though this is not giving everybody the fair opportunity. The get this service is a great opportunity, but I just feel as though it should be given to everyone.
That's good. Mr. Lawrence? No, you're good. Yeah. Ms. Allen, what we would, you have some, I think, just vital questions. And I would want you to have a conversation with Mr. David Lawrence before you leave tonight and to see where you can go with your questions, if that's okay. Okay, thank you very much.
And so the board knows, the program is under constant review. We meet quarterly to update, take a look at what's going on. I already have them looking at next year, how we're going to provide services, getting feedback from teachers, parents, and students to see if we're meeting their needs. And so this is the first step. So I say give us some time.
Thank you. Board Member Lacy?
Ms. Allen has to go talk to Mr. Lawrence. It's not because you're in trouble.
No.
We appreciate,
Well, if she was in
We-
trouble, we
we-
would send it to Mr. Lawrence.
we appreciate your questions. I also wanted to ask, okay, how much of the program is acceleration? And if you're not in a hub school, can you get and you're judged and you're tested gifted, can you participate in acceleration?
Yes.
Okay.
They need to explain it.
So and so how much, how much of the program would you say? I don't know how you would judge it. Because you don't, you only have so many people to pull people out, even 140 students in how many schools? How many hub schools?
6.
6 schools. So how much would you say,
I think
is it like half of the program is acceleration?
Okay, go ahead, Heather.
Currently in the elementary buildings, our acceleration is at 16%. I can't speak to the high schools. That would be a question for Ms. Bryant.
But tell them how.
We, those students that, this year, those students that were identified as gifted in reading in grades 1 through 3 were given the ITBS test, which is the Iowa Test of Basic Skills in reading at an above grade level. So a second grader was given the third grade reading test. If that child scored in the 75th percentile or above, they were a good candidate to be subject area accelerated in reading. And so then we took into consideration their initial identification score, their superior cognitive score, as well as the teacher's input to determine whether or not acceleration in reading was a good fit for that child.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess I do like to get things straight, or just for the record, Administrator Gruber did say that we voted to create the hub system, and I'm not sure who voted that, but that did not come to a board vote. That was an administrative decision that I recall, and it was told to the board, unless it was in some appropriation that I don't know about or anything.
Okay, we approved it, we didn't vote for it, we approved it.
So how did we approve it?
I think it was presented to us. I remember.
And we
when
had a
it-
vote?
No, we did not vote.
So how did we approve it?
The presentation of the hubs was presented, and within the hubs, that staffing was in the zero-based budget, which was part of the budget process.
Okay, the zero-based budget, yeah, we don't, in that year, so in this, was this in the most recent?
This is for this budget year, which included all the professional development.
Okay, I mean, I have all the detail on the appropriation that we voted for, and all the detail says, I mean, it basically is how many people we're putting into that system. It doesn't say that we are creating certain schools that are going to be hubs. There was nothing attached to the appropriation that says,
Correct.
there was no addendum that says that certain schools will be hub schools.
The board received that information at a retreat.
We did receive that
And
information.
that information became a part of the budget process.
It wasn't a part of the budget process, though. I mean, I can argue this with you if you'd like. It was not a part of the
That's-
budget process because the budget did not say that. The budget simply hired certain people to
If
be
you-
GISs.
If we pull out the zero-based budget, you will see gifted teachers. It is a part of the budget.
Right, gifted
It
is a
is-
part
it
of
is
the
a
budget.
program- it is a program
Designating certain
line.
schools as hubs was not part of that budget.
The budget
If you
is a
can
part
point
of
to,
the
I
pro-
can, I mean, if you can point to those
We
words
can-
in
we
the
can-
appropriation.
We can do that at the appropriate time, but yes,
That's
I can
fine.
do that. We can go back, Ms. Kidd, you can go back to see when that original presentation was made. We can match it to the zero-based budget. And if I do remember, I believe several of the board members received calls when families were contacted to move their children from buildings to buildings. If my memory is correct.
And that's, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't prove that we voted to set aside, to make certain schools hubs.
Mr. Lacy, we voted for a staffing configuration that
Exactly.
was a part of a presentation that was on the hubs, the creation of the hubs.
Could I suggest that we will look at a time when we will get further clarity in terms of the process, so that we will all be on the same page as it relates to this one specific item in terms of the budget and how and how those funds and specific schools were designated. Okay, Dr. Roundtree?
I hope this is not a loaded question, but it's one that's always constantly on my mind. And it's just kind of a theoretical question, but how do you think your efforts are going to impact our report card? I mean, that's what we're here to talk about, and we need measurable objectives. We can't project, exactly or precisely, but when we talk about that fidelity, every effort ought to be aligned with our efforts to improve our report card. That's not our only objective, but that's significant.
We have spent the last week and a half, actually, working on the numbers and informing the schools, the hub schools, what they needed to get an A, what they needed to get a B. We've moved some of the focus to reading and to math so that we know exactly where we're supposed to be standing. We know how many months a student needs to grow in order to get a better grade. So we have been working on that. And if you want the statistics, we've got them.
Well, you've been generous with sharing information, so I just wanted to make sure that we're
Oh,
on the
no.
same page again.
That is definitely a focus.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. We will hear the question from Dr. Bagaroff, and then we will express our appreciation to Dr. Roberson and his presentation this evening.
Mine is actually more of a comment, going back to some other comments. Everything at the end of the day, as Director Gruber hinted, goes back to the cost. Nothing can be done without some dollars attached to it. And I invite everybody in the audience, everyone who's watching, to actually attend some of the Finance Committee meetings so they can see how stretched the budget of this district is. And also to look back at our resolution, which we adopted, I think, back in August on unfunded mandates that have been placed on this district. Let me give you an example that our treasurer has calculated for us on the transportation. We have to transport charter and private schools. We get a subsidy, a compensation from the state for each student that we transport from those schools. However, it's not enough. We have to dip into our pockets and pay $1.2 million a year subsidizing private and charter schools. Now, if that's not ridiculous, I don't know what ridiculous is. That $1.2 million could have paid for gifted intervention specialists in every single building, okay? But it's not gonna happen because there are many other such examples, many, many examples. So please do take up your anger, not necessarily just here with this, board and with the administration, but vote and tell Columbus what needs to be done. Okay? So that's first. Second, Cincinnati Public Schools, which is the leading urban school district in Ohio, has housed a focused gifted program in one school. Okay? It's the Cincinnati Gifted Academy housed in the Hyde Park School. So even that school district, which is much, much richer than DPS, in fact, I think their median income is something like twice our city's level, had to, for financial reasons, put everybody essentially in one building. And Cincinnati is much larger than Dayton. So it's quite an inconvenience, I would imagine, to a lot of students and their parents to have their kids being driven to this one particular school every single day just because they're gifted. But that's what happens. And the same situation is everywhere else around the city, around the state, across the nation, and internationally, everywhere. So inevitably, cost plays the most important factor. Would we love to have intervention specialists in every single building? Absolutely. Would we love to have an iPad in everybody's hands? Yes. Would we love to have brand new buses for everybody? Oh, yes, we would. Would we love to have some beautiful, beautiful buildings designed by some architect from Architectural Digest? Yes, we would love that, but that's not going to happen, okay? Even for Christmas. Well, we do have, okay, but I'd like more, not just one building or two. So that's not going to happen, and this is all because of costs. So please, please be considerate of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we just have a quick presentation by one of our young
Okay, absolutely.
gifted
I'm sorry.
students.
Yes, absolutely.
Amy Andrews is our GIS at WOW, and I'm going to let her introduce her wonderful student.
Good evening. This is Jolbria Harrison. She's one of our fourth grade students at WOW, and she's going to share a little bit about her Envision project with you. The project is not complete, so she created a short PowerPoint to just give you some information about what she's doing and what she's learning.
My project is called the Travel Passport. I have to plan a vacation on a $2,000 budget.
Okay.
I have to choose a destination, research transportation options, find lodging, select daily activities, and plan my meals. For my project, I chose to travel to Washington, D.C. At first, I really wanted to fly, but after doing some research, I realized it was cheaper to drive. I will be staying in a small apartment that I found on Vacation Rentals by Owner. Some of the things I plan to see and do are the International Spy Museum, the National Theater, and take a tour through the White House. For meals, I plan on cooking breakfast and dinner in my apartment. I will eat lunch each day at a different restaurant. I'm learning lots of new things while working on this project. I'm learning all about the different attractions in Washington, D.C., learning how to manage my money. I'm learning lots of new computer skills, and I'm also learning lots of research skills, which I know I will need in the future. Well, that is all. I hope to see you at the Envision Expo sometime this spring to see my final project.
Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. Every child should be, that's what I'm talking about. I want some seniors to talk as well as her.
Mr. President, I don't think some of us can prepare PowerPoints like this, so.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Boy, we need to videotape her.
There's an adage, Dr. Bagaroff says, and a child shall lead them. And that might be some reference to us sitting here on the dais. Let us continue with our agenda. Dr. Robertson, we extend a hearty thank you to you and your staff for this presentation. We've long waited for it, so thank you. We're ready for Commissioner Mills. Okay. Superintendent Ward, we are collaborators with the City of Learners, and especially in the Men of Color initiatives, and maybe you would want to say a word to talk about how we've been involved with that initiative.
Absolutely. I like to have Commissioner Jeffrey Mims come to the podium. But about 2 years ago, Dr. Walker and I attended the mayor and commissioners retreat in which we both decided that we would focus on males of color and the achievement gap as to a way that we could improve the educational outcomes for not only our young men of color, but for all students. And so Chief David Lawrence was our point of contact from within the Dayton Public Schools. And last year, Mr. Mims, along with Commissioner Mims, along with Chief Lawrence, put together the first annual Men of Color Go Back to School. Last year, there were about 100. This year, 200. And actually go into our school buildings and do a day of mentoring. And so Commissioner Mims is here to talk about the event and also the future of the event, because as I shared with Commissioner Mims and Chief Lawrence, just coming into our schools one day isn't going to cut it. So what and what's next? So, Commissioner.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Actually, Mr. Lawrence could be here along with me to make sure I don't leave any gaps in terms of our program. But I was here probably last month, and I sort of shared some information with you about what we were trying to do. And it was very exciting. We got over the 200 member threshold the night before. We were about 175 going into that evening, and through a lot of hard work, we picked up about another 35 guys who said they wanted to be a part of the program that we had as far as men of color. You all know the data. The data is pretty much consistent nationwide in terms of where our young men happen to fall as far as achievement is concerned. We also know that through no fault of their own, it's just the system and the way that students are being taught nowadays that are focusing on issues in terms of learning styles that are not compatible with their teaching styles that are not compatible with their learning styles. It's not new, okay? It's not new. It's only gotten worse because we look at those issues. It's pretty tantamount to the gifted program as we were looking at issues there. And when we saw the district making cuts in programs that house gifted children, then we saw the appropriate decline in the number of children who were in the gifted programs. So if you're cutting art, you're cutting music, you're cutting quality athletic programs, you're cutting foreign language programs, that's where gifted children are. When you're making those cuts based upon how you balance the budget, you're probably not always thinking about those things and the kind of rippling effect it's going to have. So those same kinds of things are happening that cause young men of color, especially, to sort of fall behind, and many of them come to us behind. So that's another problem that we have. So as we tried to address those issues as best we could, we knew that the probably number one thing with those young men is that wanted to know that someone cared. They also wanted to know that they had value. And once they knew that we had a group of men who cared about them and understand that they also had value in terms of different skill sets, then they perked up, if you will, in terms of how they want to perform, not only just in school, but in also in everything that they do. So as we talk with men across this city and some outside of the city about them wanting to be involved in that process, they were more than excited to come and to take part. Now, as we talked about the splash, if you will, the splash last year for the Men of Color event and the splash this year, understanding what Superintendent Ward has indicated, we have to follow up. Last year, many of those men picked up mentees throughout the school year, and they still have some that they're working with in terms of taking them to events, taking them to games, going to speech contests, going to the spelling bees, a different variety of things that they're participating as far as the schools are concerned. We wanted to make sure that they also gave their information to the principals, so that if the principals had some of these extra activities, that they can call for some additional support in terms of, again, making sure that they stayed and maintained that type of connection. So this year was easier to get more men involved in the process because of the successful things that had happened last year. So this year's event, we hope to follow with the adoption of high schools by our local fraternities to do several things. The Men of Color issue is to look at, again, the issue in terms of how you have value, conflict mediation, resolution skills, because one of the things we found out that's so prevalent is that too many of our young people do not have some of the social skills in the same context that's accepted by adults. So they're laughing and horseplay, talking loud, is not necessarily meant to be negative. It's just kids play. And they're not always as receptive to adults as probably you would think that they should be. So that's one of the issues that we're going to focus on. Keith Byers joined us this year, and he spoke a lot about the dreams that young people have and the work ethic necessary and for them not to give up. He mentioned in a couple of sessions, because he traveled to 4 schools with me last Wednesday, And he said to them that somewhere in that room, somebody probably had the cure to AIDS. Somebody probably would find the cure to cancer. And if they're thinking about those types of things, other than just how to get a score on a test, it puts them in a much better frame of mind to be more receptive to the overall educational process. And then as we have ourselves navigated through a variety of challenges as black men who have reached certain levels, if you can call it success, or certain levels of achievement, making sure that a lot of the young people know that while we have had these challenges as well, and we've overcome those challenges, you can do the same. But there are work ethics and things of that nature that you have to make sure you put in place to do those things. The other thing that we're doing with the adoption process of the schools is to train a cohort of young men in those high schools, not only on how to be better themselves at what they're doing, but also to have a long-term sustainable process of having them go to the feeder elementary schools, and then they themselves become mentors for some of those young people, where they talk with them about their grades, their behavior, the different kinds of things that are going on, because we found that a lot of the mentor-mentee relationships work very well when there's a close age range between those individuals. Because sometimes young people see us coming, they say, here come some of these old dudes with some of these old ideas, you know, and some of those have value, of course, and some of them don't. Some of us have thick skin, we can get over that. Some of us have thin skin. But we know when the young people are coming to them, they can speak their language, they know what songs they listen to, and you know the rest of it. So they can relate sometimes a lot more easily than we can. So that's one of those other major things that we're doing. One other key thing I want to talk about is the issue where we had about 35 or 40 men at one of the schools greeting young people as they came into the door. That was at the boys' school. And we saw the expressions on those young people's faces when we did that. I talked with Marlon Shackelford because we've both gotten a lot of calls about schools who would like to see us do that at maybe every elementary school a couple times during the course of the year. And I'm reminded of something that we did in the district some years ago, a week before the proficiency test, for example. The cabinet members called parents and asked them to make sure their child got a good night's sleep, got a breakfast, got a hug and a kiss, pat on the back, and asked them to do the very best that they could as far as this test was concerned. So there are a variety of different things that we can do throughout the course of the year, and we will certainly take your lead, Madam Superintendent and President Walker, as long as you have your staff working with us, because this is a partnership, and we do not have all the answers ourselves, but we are a strong resource that's at least 200 men plus and willing to do everything we can to help. Because the connection between us and the city, we have to have a pool of workers, a pool of creators, because we got jobs that we need to fill, we got houses, and we got families that need to be raised, and every young person that we can put in place that's in a position where they could take a job, move on to one of our higher education networks that we have in our local area, then it makes this whole city better. So I'll let my partner, who I can't do much without, because whether it's 6:30 in the morning or 12 o'clock at night, we're always having these discussions on what we can do. Yeah, Mr. Lawrence.
Commissioner Mims, thanks. I'll be really brief. I think we need to think about models that are much like Cincinnati, Minneapolis, DC, Oakland. They have divisions of African American male achievement. So it's part of the, not just part of several events, and not just kind of picking around the edges, but there are divisions that are devoted to that. So the superintendent and I talked about some of these things in our weekly meeting last week, and we'll be working to make some proposals that talk about really formalizing the African American Male Achievement Initiative. So thank you.
Any questions? Any questions?
Yeah. Board Member Nerney?
No questions, Mr. Mims, but I really appreciate this initiative, and I look forward to if it gets too big for you, because, you know, you've got a lot of students that you can influence, and your influence multiplied by the high school students that will then be influencing the elementary students is just really awesome. But if you want to try a pilot program, that sounds, like a good idea. But whatever you need, if we can help you from the foundation's point of view, I think it would be great. But I really look forward to the next step, because that's the power step. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. And we'll add that Dr. Walker and Vice President Lee are on the steering committee. And again, we try to stay in step with what the district's goals are and also what the community goals are. So again, like I said, it's a partnership. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you.
We're ready.
See you at lunch.
Okay, so I would like to President Walker, members of the board, the next item on the agenda. We have several individuals here from the Ohio Department of Education, as well as Commissioner has to go through the receiving line. So we, back in March, Dr. Chris Wollert was here with Clary Huff Franklin and Betsy Apolito in regards to the district's academic status. And it was shared at that particular meeting that they would be back in 6 months for an update. So joining us tonight, we have Joanna Ward, Ohio Department of Education, Betsy Apolito, State Support Team. I'm gonna skip the gentleman in the middle. Clary Huff Franklin, who is a part of the Ohio Department of Education Academic Distress Commission Office, and Terry White, who is also a part of Clary Huff Franklin's organization in the ADC. Also joining, because it is great to have him here, is Judge A.J. Wagner, who's a member of the State Board of Education. So without further ado, I believe I'll let the team, they have several presentations to give us. And would you happen to have a handout?
Yeah, yes, Tarek is going to pass that out. Good evening, I am Clary Huff Franklin, the Director of the Academic Distress Commissions and Education Reform Office. To President Walker, board members, Superintendent Ward, and all, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to share updates with you based on the last time we were here. We would like to give you an overview of what we'll be sharing this evening, a summary of the activities leading up to our present time. Then we'll share the differentiated accountability in general that takes place in the state. Then we would like to share more specifically about our differentiated accountability system that takes place in Dayton. And then we will share the progress on the recommendations that were given in the district review that we actually shared back in March, as Superintendent Ward mentioned. We'll conclude with our contingent projections for the district. And having said that, we would like to say, you can keep it right there. As Superintendent Ward said, we did the district review. It was a district review team that took place in January 26th through the 30th. It was a week review. Upon completion of the review, we gave a presentation to the board here in May 12th, actually, this year. And the report that came from that review is posted on the Ohio Department of Education website under Academic Distress Commissions, but it's also a tab that refers to the reviews, and Dayton is listed there. Today, we're giving an update as to what has actually happened in and with the district since our presentation in May 12th. We said then we would come back in 6 months, so here we are.
So right now, I would like to introduce to you, you can go to the next one, Director Johanna Ward, who is the Director of the Office of Improvement and Innovation. If she'll come at this time.
Thank you, Clary. President Walker, Board, and Superintendent Ward. First, I'm just going to give you a general overview. I think we can, I don't have control of the slides. A general overview of the ESEA waiver. I think this was presented to you a while back, and so this will just be like a reminder and kind of touch base on some of those concepts. So Ohio's waiver to the U.S. Department of Education to renew its Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the flexibility waiver, has been approved for an additional year. So what does that mean? This allows Ohio's struggling schools some greater flexibility as they work to improve student performance. The chart that you see here kind of pictorializes the different categories. It allows our state to target support to the most at-risk schools while also rewarding some schools for high student performance and progress. It makes the state's school improvement structure and the supports contained in it clearer. It extends Ohio's permit to eliminate double testing in middle schools. It contains clear pathways to model schools who can better prepare their students for high school diplomas and careers. The differentiated accountability system contains this range of support levels that are based on the district report card grades. These support levels feature specific interventions, supports, and monitoring, and we'll get into that here in a few minutes. The system strengthens our academic distress commission. The districts with at least one priority school will receive intensive support. Districts with focus and watch schools and have a D or an F on their AMO will receive a moderate level of support. And then districts labeled as independent with at least a C or better on the AMO, and no schools in priority focus or watch status will have greater flexibility and fewer requirements. The system celebrates success by expanding the rewards and eliminating some conflicts. So on the next slide, there's a list of school award designations. That is really small on your screen. I hope you can see that. You can access some of the details behind the award designations on the Ohio Department of Education's website, so you can look into that a little bit further and see what it is to reach any of those reward designations. There's all A's, overall A's, State Board of Education Momentum Reward, Schools of Promise, High Performing Schools of Honor, High Progress Schools of Honor, National Blue Ribbon Schools, National Title I Distinguished Schools. USDOE requires states to categorize their lowest performing schools and school districts with significant school subgroup achievement gaps into 3 categories, and that's the list on the right. Progress, or priority, focus, and other. And Ohio has chosen to categorize or name the other as a watch school. Of the 32 buildings that Dayton has, 28 of those buildings are in some level of accountability status. So you have access to this PowerPoint, I believe, later. You can look at it. You can click on the red priority box or the orange focus box or the yellow watch box, and that'll take you to the information on ODE's website about the details surrounding each of those statuses. You have 11 buildings that are in priority status, 9 in focus, and 9 in watch status. This is a list of the priority schools. These are the 11. So what does that mean to be a priority school? A priority school is one that ranks in the lowest 5% of schools in Ohio in student academic performance. To help it improve, the Ohio Department of Education gives each priority school its highest level of support and monitoring. A transformation specialist, there are 2 assigned to Dayton, Eileen Diamond and Michael Kelly. They're assigned to these schools, and they will coach, support, and monitor each priority school and its district through a visit. They visit the buildings a minimum of once a month. The priority school districts will also assign a district staff to help facilitate the Ohio improvement process. and will help implement the Priority Schools Improvement Plan. Those schools that you see highlighted in yellow, those were also designated as focus. There are some also designated as focus schools on the next tab, but those in yellow were identified by the Dayton Board of Education in September 2014 as the Dayton's Watch Schools, when you identified schools with a performance index of 70 or below. So I just wanted you to kind of see the overlap there. The next slide, these are the focus school buildings. A focus school is a building that receives the Title I funds and has one of the state's largest achievement gap in student performance and graduation rates. A focus school receives support and monitoring from the regional state support team. So I will have Ms. Betsy Apolito speak about that here in just, you can come up just a second. The focus school district will assign district personnel to receive professional development and coaching from the state support team, so the district staff member can support that school or those particular schools in using and implementing the Ohio improvement process.
Thank you, Johanna. Superintendent Ward, members of the Board of Education, my education colleagues, and members of the Dayton community. I'd like to introduce some of my staff members who have joined us here this evening, and I'd like to introduce Mary Brooks. If you'd stand, please. Mary Brooks is one of our literacy consultants, and she is assigned to Eastmont and Kaiser, and Mary is serving in the pre-K 3 grade levels. Connie Prairie. Connie Prairie has a special background in preschool special education. Connie also serves in that pre-K 3 arena, and she serves Dayton Boys and Kemp. Vicki Hudipole, another one of our staff members, is here with us this evening. Vicki has a background in special education as well as she has been a principal in another district. She has extensive experience in curriculum and instruction as well. And Vicki is serving in grades 4-8, and she's serving Dayton Boys and Kemp. So there are additional members of my team. There are 10 additional consultants assigned to serve Dayton Public Schools, again in the areas of pre-K 3 teacher-based teams, grades 4-8, and then we have some serving in 9-12. At the central office, we have supports also around district leadership, curriculum, special education, and climate and culture. Our intentional supports have really been directed at the district and building level for focus and watch schools. And as you can see by the screen, based on our availability, we have flooded the district with services and support to the total of, from our staff, 546 days of service from our team, which equates to about 3,000, almost 3,900 hours. So we're very proud to be members of the team and welcomed by Superintendent Ward, the district leadership team, and the others who are with us on a daily basis, the teachers and the principals. So we're very pleased to have them with us. If you could go to the next slide. Our work basically focuses around the Ohio improvement process, and many of you are familiar with strategic planning processes like Baldrige and others that you may have heard of in different organizations and business. And the Ohio improvement process is a marriage of some of those improvement processes, but we're really education focused. And if you look at this tornado, as we call it, this is the supports that the state support team provides. There is a significant body of research on teacher teaming. You may have heard them spoken as collaborative teams, professional learning communities, communities of practice. However, in our state support team structures, we call them teacher-based teams or TBTs. We have building leadership teams. That's not a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. Those are BLTs. And we have a district leadership team. Our consultants, the state support team consultants that are here and then that are also not with us, they meet weekly with teacher-based teams in those grade bands, and they coach them through what we call a 5-step process. They review classroom data, they look at behavior and academics, they plan for instruction that is differentiated and based on student needs. The teachers then go back and they teach that instruction that they've planned. They come back together after they've gather their formative data. They review that formative data and they make decisions based on that to say whether or not we need to adjust our instruction. So we're really focusing on changes in adult practice that lead to student performance and changes and improvement in student performance. We are, as you can see by this graphic, you probably can't read much of it, but it is a cyclical process. So the teacher-based team's data then rises to the building leadership team. That building leadership team has membership of each of the teacher-based teams, and they then have discussions about what's happening at the building level, following a plan that the district has designed. That data from the building leadership team then lifts to the district level. The district then looks at data and feedback from the building leadership teams and then pushes that information. We need you to work here. We need more supports there, and drives that discussion back to the building leadership team level. So it's a wonderful process that has been working. We have some schools in the district we've worked with over the past years who have shown significant changes in their student performance. And we really disaggregate data to look at those achievement gaps because we know that focus schools have been identified for gaps with their subgroups. So our team works closely with special education and intervention specialists in the building to ensure we're looking at those achievement gaps. Thank you.
Don't take mine. So then the last category will be the watch schools. This is a list of Dayton schools that are considered watch schools. And a watch school is a school that has a D or an F on the AMO and the report card. And there's been a measure of that for 2 years, or is receiving state funding for subgroups, and those subgroups are not making adequate achievement progress and closing the gap. Watch schools are a new category of schools that has been added to the Ohio's accountability system. These schools must implement an improvement plan to close the gap amongst the lowest achieving subgroup and targeting resources and interventions beginning in the 15-16 school year. I wanted to bring your attention to this. Title I also has SIG grants, which are competitive grants. You have 3 priority buildings that have SIG funding. Each of those 3 buildings has $315,429.40 for each building, and that is to support their plan and implementation of the Ohio Improvement Plan and to support the efforts to help close the gap and bring those teachers and students into systems that will help their achievement. Lastly, I wanted to bring to your attention, in reading the plan that you all have, I just received the plan last week or so and started reading through it. You have a large community support built into your plan. And I would definitely promote that you continue that. You build those efforts. And I've seen a lot of that tonight here at your board meeting. So many initiatives that are involved in your schools. And that's definitely something that's going to help move and help your schools progress. The collaboration, the excitement that's ignited that I saw tonight with your football team, the community, your Men of Color group, all of that that's happening, that's building connections to your community is really going to help you move your plan forward. So all these things are listed in your plan, and I would just encourage you to continue these connections to support your plan. I'd like to turn the rest of this back over to Ms. Huff Franklin.
I should have mentioned that we are honored at Ohio Department of Education to have State Board Representative A.J. Wagner with us because he's in Columbus fighting the battle, the good fight, with us, and we appreciate seeing him. And the reason you saw us hugging Jeff Mims is because he was the predecessor that was working with us, but we see he's doing great things here, so it's okay. But we really appreciate you, Judge Wagner, your support. So I was whispering over to Betsy to say, are you going to explain more about their plan? So Johanna mentioned how the district has a plan, and receiving the school improvement grants both their schools, the individual schools, have to have a plan to show how are they going to reach success, higher achievement with the students. Well, the district has a plan as well. And of course, the schools have to base their plan on what the district goals are. So there was already a plan that the district had before we came with our district review. Upon the completion of our district review and our report, we had recommendations at the end. So we'd like to note that from the time of May 12th, when we were here, the district worked collaboratively with us to look at the recommendations to figure out how can we include them into the district plan. And so they have formulated a 1 to 3 year plan to make sure that all of the community promises and everything, all of the recommendations from the various plans that the community has come into agreement with, along with the Ohio Department of Education report recommendations, are included in their plan. So we're happy to say that it has been a great collaboration, and they have been, the district has been very cooperative and open to making that process work. And so how that process continues from May 12th, after we sat down with the leadership, the superintendent and leadership, to incorporate the recommendations, and it's my understanding which parts of it are shared with the board on a monthly basis. On a monthly basis, the state support team, which Ms. Apolito had referred to, and who we are happy to have in our presence today, they are meeting with the district along with Tarek White from our office. It's a collaborative effort from Ohio Department of Education to give supports to the district and also continue with the monitoring of the district plan. So they have the plan every month, whether they're physically meeting. It may be every other month that they're physically meeting, but every month we are kept abreast of the progress of the plan, and always asking if there's additional supports by way of professional development or anything by way of having maybe someone from Ohio Department of Education or other districts to come and give support. That's a part of our goal. And if we see red flags, we're trying to communicate with the district. It is not our intention to necessarily come back to the board unless we do see something egregious. But one statement I feel we can make that is contingent upon the adherence and fidelity to the district plan that is in place, we feel confident that we should not have to have more intensive supports like have had to be placed on other districts in the state as we move forward. So it is our expectation, if the district continues in the vein that it is now and follows with fidelity and adherence to their plan, we do not foresee that more intensive supports will have to be placed upon the district. So having said that, that is good news because it speaks to the collaboration that's taken place up to this point. You have to have a plan. And so I'll remind you that the report that was written by our center showed strengths that already exist in the district, and it does give challenges and areas for improvement. And it's those areas for improvement that the recommendations speak to. And that's what's in the district plan, where they're saying we have within our 1 to 3 year plan the format to accomplish those areas that our center has identified as lacking and needing improvement in your district. So we can say hats off to you for that. So at this 6 month point, we can say that things are moving in a positive trajectory. So having said that, when we were here last time, there were 2 questions. And before I move on about the questions regarding value added, is there any other question of our ODE team at all?
we'll go to Dr. Roundtree, and then to Board Member Nerney and Board Member Dr. Bagaro. Okay, and
Just real quick, Ms. Franklin, I don't want to, because this is a board meeting. If you go back all the way to the third or fourth slide, and I just want a point of clarity just for the viewing public, because this is a community effort of improvement all the way. It's the one that has the ESEA waiver on it.
That one?
It's right there.
Okay.
And I'm sorry,
Okay.
Dr. Ward, I think you were speaking to this one, but I just want to make it clear for everyone. Where is Dayton Public Schools as far as the support status? In which column do we fall?